Staying in the Middle East, we're joined by Rod Martin, political analyst and founder and CEO of Martin Capital. Thank you so much for your time today, Rod. What do you make of President Trump's announcement that he intends to blockade the Strait of Hormuz?
Well, it would be hard to be happier, honestly. I mean, Iran has been hanging this sword of Damocles over the global oil market since I was a small child. And the threat is the potency in it. Oh my goodness, Iran might block the strait. What would we do then? 20% of the world's oil goes through there. Okay, well, now you've threatened it and you've shown that you can't actually make it stick. What worked here for them is the fear that got insurers to back off. But all the U.S. Navy has to do is show up with escort ships, and that game is over. The fact that we transited the strait yesterday with destroyers shows you that we can actually control that water. But if we control it, the Iranians can't. So now what was actually an asset for them is just slipping completely away. They have incentivized all their neighbors to build pipeline infrastructure to get around the Strait of Hormuz. They have incentivized their neighbors to further support the United States in its efforts. And this blockade cuts off all Iran's money that it's earning through exports of oil to China. There's very, very little they can get to China that doesn't have to pass through the strait. So where are they going for money now? And the president has made clear, we are going to keep the straits closed on our terms, and you may rest assured that that will ultimately include our friends getting through and our enemies being blocked.
Yeah, so staying with that, the president said that at some point all ships will be allowed to go in and out of the strait. How do you view that?
Well, all ships except Iran's. And Iran, of course, will face quite a difficulty here until and unless it either makes peace on Donald Trump's terms, which I think he summarized better than anybody earlier in March when he called it unconditional surrender. Or in the alternative, we actually get a free Iran, the people rise up, overthrow this oppressive regime that actually executes young girls for getting raped. It's one of the most wicked forces on the planet. And if it falls and there's a free Iran, it's a boon for peace and prosperity to the whole region and the whole world. So the president's playing for that. We don't know if we can get there without boots on the ground. That's a good question, and we're going to find out. But right now, with our ability to hit individual IRGC members in the streets with drones, we have done what normally would have had to be done with an invading army and snipers and all the things that we're accustomed to in World War II and Korea and Vietnam and Iraq and Afghanistan. And those days are gone. Technology has shot past all of it. And I think we've got a real shot at the Iranian people being able to rise and take control of their future.
So just coming back to the Strait of Hormuz and the potential shutdown that seems to be imminent, how do you think this move will impact global oil prices and eventually what we pay at the pump? I mean, I'm paying $4 a gallon right now.
In the short term, we're going to have the same problems we've been having. Obviously, oil is elevated. At the same time, painfully obviously, I'm paying $1 a gallon less than I was under Joe Biden. So the inconvenience to the United States is relatively slight. The real inconvenience is to East Asia and to Europe. Europe gets a lot of its oil from the Persian Gulf. East Asia gets most of its oil from the Persian Gulf. So what we're seeing now is an enormous convoy of tankers, and the president posted a map of this streaming from the Gulf of Oman and from East Asia around Africa toward Texas. We're going to sell an insane amount of oil and gas from the United States. That's going to be a boon to investors here, retirees, oil workers, the entire U.S. economy at the expense of the Middle East and Russia and frankly China. So in the very near term, we will still have elevated prices. In the slightly longer term, we're going to see prices come back down a lot. And with Iran no longer able to threaten the Strait of Hormuz going forward, I believe that the risk premium that's been baked in since the 80s is going to go away. And there's a very real chance we could see oil drop 10 or even $20 beneath where it was globally before this war began.
We really are at a remarkable point in human history right now with all of this. Now, Trump's blockade announcement came after failed talks between the U.S. and Iran and Pakistan this weekend. Here's Vice President J.D. Vance, who was present at the talks.
The simple fact is that we need to see an affirmative commitment that they will not seek a nuclear weapon, and they will not seek the tools that would enable them to quickly achieve a nuclear weapon. That is the core goal of the President of the United States, and that's what we've tried to achieve through these negotiations. Again, their nuclear program, such as it is, the enrichment facilities that they had before, they've been destroyed. But the simple question is, do we see a fundamental commitment of will for the Iranians not to develop a nuclear weapon, not just now, not just 2 years from now, but for the long term? We haven't seen that yet. We hope that we will.
Rod, were you surprised at all by the outcome of these talks?
No, this is exactly what I expected. There was just no way the Iranians were going to agree to our terms. And our terms are actually pretty straightforward and reasonable. It is not acceptable for Iran to have a nuclear weapon. Iran is led by a sect called the Twelvers. They actually believe that to bring their Messiah back, called the Mahdi, they actually have to burn down the world, ideally in nuclear fire. We can't let people like that have a nuclear weapon. That's insane, especially after they just demonstrated an intermediate range ballistic missile capability that can reach Diego Garcia, which is what they shot at, which means they could reach Paris and Berlin and London. They've orbited a satellite. They are 1/2 step away from being able to build an ICBM that could carry such a weapon to New York or Kansas City or Los Angeles. There's no way that we can allow that. And they are speaking with forked tongue too, because they have been telling us for decades, oh, we don't want a nuclear weapon. Oh, we pronounced a fatwa against nuclear weapons. Bunk. You don't enrich to 60% unless you're building a bomb. 20%, or these days even less than that, is plenty for commercial purposes. And we have previously offered them unlimited commercial nuclear fuel for actual power plants. We understand they need to sell their oil and gas. We understand that they're better off with nuclear power. That's why the United States helped the Shah begin a nuclear program before the Islamic Revolution. But these guys don't want that. What they want is the ability to menace the world with nuclear weapons. They are not deterrable through mutual assured destruction in the way that China or Russia would be, and we simply aren't going to allow it to happen. So of course these talks were going to fail. They were never going to agree to it, and now we're going to conclude what we started.
Now, the president said on Fox, speaking with Maria Bartiromo this morning, that he's expecting Iran to come back to the negotiating table and agree to no nuclear ambitions. Are you as hopeful on this?
I think that might make sense if we pound them as hard as I expect we're about to. And a lot of people really took the president much too seriously. Or I should say literally. Seriously is appropriate. Literally was not when he said he was going to end their civilization. But the point is exactly the same kind of language Harry Truman used when he threatened Japan in 1945. It's, we're going to end your system as you know it. And that system is the Islamic regime. It is that evil regime that tosses people off buildings, that executes young girls, that does all these oppressive things like murdering 36,000 peaceful protesters in the streets on 2 days in January this year. This regime must not stand. So the president's going to hit them hard. There's no question that they're going to get out of this box without either agreeing to hand over the nuclear program or, in the alternative, agreeing to leave. And they're probably not going to do that, at least soon. But the truth is, if they don't, the Iranian people are likely to rise, overthrow them, and hang them all from the nearest lamppost. And so I think the closer we get to that outcome, the more likely they are to actually come back to the table.
In closing here, Rod, President Trump is threatening China with 50% tariffs if it aids Iran militarily. What would 50% tariffs do to China's economy if that ended up going into place?
Well, it would be really, really bad. To start with, the Iranians have gotten over 40% of their oil for the last number of years in this steeply discounted sanctioned form. They're buying 90% of Iran's supply. They're buying, a huge percentage of Russia's and Venezuela's. And all of a sudden, that's all going away. So they've been paying way below market for that oil. That's a huge shock to their economy just by having to pay market prices. And of course, market prices aren't what they were a month and a half ago. Market prices are much elevated now. So it's a double shock to China's system. Now, if on top of that, you add 50% tariffs, that's going to put them into a recession, if not worse. There's just no escaping it. Their economy is already teetering. Honest analysts have been pointing this out now for a couple of years. They're really in trouble. So what the president is threatening is really meaningful. And my guess is we're going to see the Chinese back off on some of these discussions about arms. They're going to bluster. They're not really going to ship much. We demonstrated that over the last year when they didn't ship Iran any modern fighter jets or other things that they needed after the 12-day war. They're going to back off. And we're going to have a very interesting summit meeting in May where I think we'll actually get to a relatively decent deal between the United States and China.
And we will definitely be following that closely. Rod Martin, political analyst and founder and CEO of Martin Capital, thank you so much.
Thank you.